if you're like me and you read the internet when you go home at night, you either read that freemium is the most awesome thing ever or the worst business model you could possibly have. We've got Jules, who's a general partner at IVP, to come actually tell us the truth on this subject. So this should be great.
The answer is it's both. So should we all, is that it? Can I leave or not? Okay. So I'm Jules. I'm a general partner at IVP. We're a later stage venture capital firm. We're based here on Sand Hill Road. I've been in the business for 33 years. Somebody asked me on the way in what IVP stands for. It stands for Institutional Venture Partners, which I think is like the most unsexy name. So I'm hoping that's why I'm here, not how I look or something like that. So, we've been around a long time. They didn't have cool names back then. We've backed a lot of good companies. So just recently, we're investors in Twitter, Dropbox, Snapchat, Kayak, Retail Me Not, a lot of big enterprise companies as well, Yazdi, App Dynamics, Eucalyptus Software. So we're excited about the companies we back. We'll invest $10 million all the way up to $100 million. And about a year ago, I was thinking about what's changing around the tech landscape. And one of the things that was getting a lot of press, actually because it was sexy, was freemium. And everybody's focused on, I want to be a freemium company. I want to be a freemium company, and looking at Dropbox and Evernote and a lot of those companies out there. And we decided to actually do some research. We had been investors in Dropbox and backed a lot of the freemium game companies like Zynga and Supercell. And so we did some research, and we actually put together 6 lessons for freemium companies. And I think these lessons will help. Freemium, while it sounds sexy, is actually a very unsexy thing to actually execute. And so I think these lessons will be helpful. Freemium is a double-edged sword. So on the one hand, it can get you lots of users, and that can be quite attractive. It can get you lots of press in TechCrunch, but it can also bite you because you can end up building a business that essentially crushes you if you're not able to monetize it. So you need to be careful. It also requires lots of training. So thinking about these lessons are going to be important. And we said we weren't able to have this guy teach us the lessons of freemium. So we actually went to the startups who knew it. And so we actually interviewed these 9 startups on their lessons of freemium. Not all of them, by the way, have pure freemium business models. Almost all of them experimented with freemium at some point. But they were very essential in doing this. So these are the experts, and we thank them for their work. So the 6 lessons. The first lesson is start with the product. A lot of companies start and say, I'm building a freemium business. Great. Well, what are you actually solving? What are you doing? You really need to start with the product and think about where the pain is in the customer base. So Steve Jobs wasn't saying, I'm going to build a vertically integrated PC or a computer company. He was thinking, people need this product. I'm going to build it. I'm going to think about the business model, how I sell it later. It's the same thing. You don't start thinking, I'm definitely building a SaaS company if your customers all want to buy licensed software. They all want it. They don't want it hosted. They want it behind the firewall. You really got to start with the pain. So how many people know the difference between the concept of a vitamin or an aspirin in technology? Do people know that concept? So a few people, so I'll explain it. So a vitamin is basically a product that, how many people actually take their vitamins? A lot. We try, but if we miss a day, it doesn't really matter. So whereas an aspirin type product is something that there's an acute pain, and you're taking an aspirin to solve that pain. So we're all trying to build aspirin products. We're not trying to build products that are vitamins. So when you're really thinking about freemium, don't start with, I'm building freemium just because. Think about it. My customers have a specific pain. Freemium solves that pain for them. The second thing is that a lot of companies build freemium companies, but they do it in a gimmicky way. The free product does not stand alone. For a company, in my mind, to be both a true freemium business, it has to have both a free product that someone can use and get value out of that and never convert to paid. And it's also got to have a paid product that they end up paying for. So I was doing my taxes about 7 months ago. I saw on TurboTax it said, you can do a free return on TurboTax. We offer free software for you. But for anyone who's actually done their taxes, they realize that those are only for the federal return. Most of us have to do state returns too. So to actually complete and have a free tax experience is impossible. So they're just using that as an advertising mechanism, not as an actual product. So if you're building a freemium business, think about delivering value honestly to both free users and to those paid users. The second lesson is know your customer. Really understand how they want to buy. Free software may not be the right business model for them. And there's a couple things that you need to make sure before, to know your customer. First, think about your product. How complex is your product? If your product's incredibly complex, it's not great as a free product, freemium business. Freemium businesses really have to do all of the selling, the customer service, all that stuff without any people actually touching it. So there's a lot of products that I call IKEA products. This is I think, fake IKEA ad. I hope it's fake. Just showing how hard it is to put together anything from IKEA. If your product's at all like IKEA, you need someone to set it up, to come to their offices, to do training or support. Do not be a freemium company. You should be compensated for that. Workday is an amazing company, but it would be a terrible freemium company, right? So it's incredibly complex. They do a great job of that, but it's not something that someone can do just integrate in a couple hours. There's other products like Dropbox or Weebly. You can literally get value from the product within seconds. Those products are less complex. They may be complex on the back end, but from the user perspective, they can't have any complexity. Also understand if free is actually attractive to your users. So sometimes free isn't all that good. We drive by couches on the side of the road. We drive by garage sales, and sometimes we see, oh, it's free, but we don't actually pick those things up, right? They're not. We know that free is not really free. Free takes up our time. It may be difficult, so don't think that free solves all your problems. I think if somebody offered you, for example, free, things can also they can take up time, but they can also actually make us nervous if someone offers something to us for free. If someone offered free babysitting or free LASIK surgery, you'd kind of say, okay, I don't know if this is actually the right model. I actually want to pay for it. And so if your customers really want to pay for it, or they're not willing to spend the time to pick up that couch, to pick up your product, it may not make sense to be a freemium company. And I think this is one of the most important lessons. So free users should add value to your business. So I think there's a big difference between users and customers. So when a company says, we've got 100 users, the users are people that don't pay you any money. They're people that are getting value from your product, but they're not actually paying you money. To be someone who's actually, when they're paying you money, they become a customer. So a lot of companies say, we've got 100 million users. We're in great shape. We're a great business. So how many of those are actually customers? And I think that's when you're driving business value. That's what you really need to think about. And so the free users need to actually add value to your business. They can do that in two ways. The first way is that those free users convert to paid customers over time. That's the most classic freemium business. Someone starts out free. They get more value from it. They then become paid. This graph, for people who haven't seen it before, is a famous graph from Evernote. This is called their smile graph because it looks like a smile. You'll never forget it now. But this basically shows cumulative conversion to paid users over time. So what it's showing is that about a little more, almost 40%, 45% of people convert after the first month to a paid user. This is returning users. I'm sorry, not actually paid. But these are people that return to your product over time. So 45% return in the first month. Then it goes down. People naturally get fatigued about your product. But what's interesting about Evernote, and this is different than a lot of maybe games companies, is that all of a sudden those users come back. And the reason is it becomes sticky. You realize you start out putting some of your notes in Evernote. Maybe you don't use it for a week. Then all of a sudden, months later, you get addicted to it. You're coming back again and again. You're coming back more. So you're getting basically more value from that product over time. And it's that additional value over time that actually causes you to want to convert. So this has become so essential to your life. So really think about trying to build your business. Measure this same chart. See if you have a smile graph. What you don't want is a graph that just goes right down into the ground. You really need to make sure that that engagement increases over time. Sometimes, so that was the first way. So a free user can convert into a paid customer. The second way is that a free user can actually attract a paid customer, a different person. So this is an ad, I think, for Applebee's or some restaurant. But basically it's saying kids eat free, kids eat free. Now, they're not doing that to hope that there's hundreds of kids that come to their restaurant and they don't make any money. They realize that kids coming to Applebee's probably will bring their parents. Those parents will probably spend a lot of money. So they're attracting free users, but they know by attracting those free users, the kids, they then bring in people that actually pay for the product. So I think there's other examples of this. Company SurveyMonkey, which is one of the companies I interviewed. If you actually ask them, SurveyMonkey is a free product. I've used it for free. The free users rarely convert to paid. But this is a $1 billion plus business. So what's going on here? Well, free users are sending out hundreds of surveys all the time. And eventually those surveys enter the email inbox of a marketer at a big company, someone who's used to paying tens of thousands of dollars for market research. When those people think about doing market research, the first thing they think about is, I need to use SurveyMonkey. I think if you have over 200 people that you're surveying, you have to pay. So all of a sudden, they're getting a bunch of people paying for the product. And then there's a few special companies that have both free users that convert to paid customers, and then also free users that attract new paid customers. And one example of this is Dropbox. So Dropbox has both increased value over time. The more you use Dropbox, the more value you get from it. On the first day, you may only have 100 photos. You may just be testing it out. It's not that valuable. But when you have your whole life in Dropbox, it's incredibly sticky. So it's got that increased value over time. And then the second thing that Dropbox has is virality. So when you're sharing a file with somebody, all of a sudden you're attracting a new potential user who then could also become a paid customer. So if you can get the holy grail of having both those mechanics working, that can result in a really big business. 4, make sure the math works. So I'm gonna hopefully it's okay. I'm gonna do some math in this presentation. It's gonna be very simple though, but a lot of companies don't realize that to actually be a successful freemium company, the first thing you need is to be attacking an incredibly large market. The reason we see the biggest freemium companies like Dropbox and Evernote, SurveyMonkey, they're attacking multi-billion-dollar markets, and things are working. So in this example, one thing you can do when you're starting a freemium business is figure out how many users do I need to be a really big business. So I just picked a number. I said, if you want to be a $100 million business annually in annual revenue, and you're charging about $100 per customer. I'm just thinking this is per year. That means you need 1 million paid customers. 1 million paid customers. And if your lifetime conversion rate is 3%, so for freemium, most conversion rates are between 1% and 10%. So I picked 3%. That means you need to attack a market where you can get 33 million free users using your product. So if you're going after a small market, there's only 1 million users in that market, and you don't have a product that's priced incredibly high, you're not going to be able to build a big freemium business. So I've talked to some companies. I talked to one that said, we're building software for the venture capital industry, and they were pitching us on this software. We're going to have a freemium model. Terrible market, right? There's not that many venture capitalists out there. So charge us, right? Actually have a model where you charge us. Don't have a model that's 100% free. The second type of math is make sure the math works around your revenue per user is greater than your cost to acquire a user. So in this example, if you've got essentially someone who pays $70 per year, 3% of those people convert. I picked a viral factor. Basically, people will attract other users. That results in about $3, a little more than $3 of revenue per free user. You need to compare that to how much it costs to serve all of your users, whether they pay or don't. So if it costs $1 just from a product standpoint for a free user, and 50 cents for support, and 50 cents for marketing, that's $2 of cost. So this model actually works. But there's a lot of businesses where it's incredibly costly to support. If you're doing customer service or implementation, you've got those IKEA-type problems. This model will break. It'll cost too much. You won't be able to get enough revenue, and essentially you won't be ROI positive. So really think of your free users as a marketing expense. They're a marketing expense to then lead to those paid customers. Fifth lesson, love your cohorts. So a cohort, for those people that don't know, is basically when you track a group of new registrations or new users. You track them, let's say everybody that joined Dropbox in July, that would be one cohort of users. You track what they do from a behavior standpoint over time, and you measure that over time. And that's a really important analysis for freemium companies because different than license models, in a license model, you know how you're doing each month. When you're selling software and you're getting paid up front for that, you know how many sales you made, you know if your business is good or bad. With freemium, you may not actually know because people won't convert for several years down the road. So you have to track these cohorts of users. You need to be like Drago in Rocky IV instead of like Rocky. Don't do the whole like thing in the woods and the snow. Make sure you're actually measuring everything. Be kind of very analytical as a freemium business. This is an example of what a cohort chart looks like. Basically, this tracks quarters since sign up. So for the people that maybe started in July, this is every quarter you're measuring them, and you're measuring what your cumulative conversion is over time, conversion from free to paid. So in this case, basically after 6 quarters, a year and a half, you've got about 1.5% of people converting. The great thing about this company, it's a made-up example, is that the conversion cohorts are actually getting better over time. So that's something to track. And then the final thing is go beyond freemium. So a lot of companies just say, we're a great freemium business. We're going to stop there. I think freemium is actually just the start. Ultimately, you're trying to solve customer pain. That's the most important thing. And so if this will work, remember that sales is not the enemy. A lot of companies say, I'm going to be a freemium business. I'm never going to have one salesperson because that's my culture. I'm never going to have one support person. So what if there's a really big customer that is $1 million deal, or it's really can be helpful for your business? I think it's appropriate to layer on sales onto freemium businesses, and both Evernote and Dropbox are doing this. So you can start freemium, and then eventually, as you grow up, add salespeople. Hopefully not this person. And then think about free trials too. A lot of companies say they want to do something free because they want to attract users. A lot of times free trials work great. And this is really important. A lot of people ask, should I do a free trial or should I be a freemium business? So the quick answer to that is you should do a free trial if the product can be understood within those first 30 days and people can get lots of value from it in those first 30 days. Because if they do that, they'll get that value in the first 30 days. They'll then convert to paid. If your product takes a year to get a lot of value in, and I think Evernote may take longer than 30 days, for products like that, it's actually better to be freemium because you need to get them really sticky, and over time they get better. So those are my lessons. Happy to answer any questions. I think I've got 3 minutes left. There's also a paper on our website that you can look at that's got more of these lessons in there if you want a copy of that. And you can also email me at jmaltz@ivp.com. Thanks. Yes?
Just kind of generally, I always see free trials being 30 days. Is there ever like a good set of time, like maybe 45 days, 60 days, or?
Shorter is better, right? Because I think what you're ultimately trying to do is convert them into, you're trying to create an artificial time period to give them enough time to use the product, but to then convert them to paid. So some companies, actually see companies do shorter, 14 days, or in some cases 7 days. Because if somebody's really not using your product after 7 days or 14 days, they're not a serious customer. They're not going to wake up and say, 90 days, all of a sudden I'm going to start using it. So I really think, for whatever reason, 30 days is kind of the industry standard, but I would actually experiment with pushing it shorter and making sure that for those first couple days they actually engage. I bet a lot of companies figure out that the people that actually pay are the ones who are highly engaged in the first 3 days of trial. So actually getting people to engage in those first 3 days is the most important thing. Yep?
You mentioned that lifetime conversion rates can range from 1 to 10%. Can you share a little bit more about what are some benchmarks behind that number from what you see and what the timeframe is?
Yeah, it's all over the board. So it's all across the board. So I think the 1 to 10% is sort of almost like a lifetime conversion value. I think 1 is quite low. I think anything above 3 to 5% is much better if you can do that. It also, and this is a really hard question. We were trying to figure out, well, what should be free and what should be paid in your product. Ultimately, you can adjust some of those dials to make sure that you get to a 3 to 5% or 5% plus conversion. If you're only at 1% or 0.5%, it probably means not enough. There's too many features in the free product and not enough really important features that are only paid. So I'm seeing an X, so I got to go. So thank you very much.